You have no control over your body, you have no control over what's being done to you, and you really don't have a choice in that. One of the things that you can control at that point in time, or in my own personal story, was my feelings, or whether to feel them or not. I learned at a very, very early age that alcohol numbed my feelings. I learned at the age of 9 years old that if I went behind the schoolyard and I drank a bunch of beer, that it pretty much numbed my feelings so I didn't feel anything. You know? So I learned that unhealthy coping skill started at the age of 9 for me. And I used that for many, many, many years. When I was 16, I probably started, experimenting with 15 and 16. Probably started experimenting a little bit more with the drugs. And that actually, for me, felt too out of control. I used it for a while, and, it was effective at numbing out, along with the dissociation. It worked for me at the time. Wasn't the best option, and it certainly wasn't healthy for me either. It put me in a lot of danger. I can remember being 9 years old, and not 9 years old, 13 years old actually, and I went to a party with some friends, crashed the party or whatever, and they of course were drinking and everything, and I remember just about drinking myself into oblivion, at 13 years old. And I remember kind of, pulling myself away from the crowd and going outside, and I laid down in the middle of the street, and I just cried and just prayed to God that a car would come and just hit me and just put me out of my frickin' misery. That's how much pain and pain and feeling and emotion that I was trying to cover up. Thankfully a car didn't come. But I can remember things like that, instances like that, over and over and over again, that happened. When I got about 16, and my grandmother had passed away, she was one of the people who actually took care of me and that I really felt a lot for. She was probably the only real steadier mother figure that I had in my life. And when she died, I just felt like I was just so alone, and I started doing a lot of self-harm. I'm not proud of those things, but it's part of my history and it's part of who I am. And I started cutting and started doing a lot of self-infliction damage. I burnt my leg before, and just stuff like that. I can remember going into the woods. Actually, I probably started the self-infliction, self-harming behaviors long before that, because I remember going into the woods when I was, 11 years old, and trying to break my arms up against trees and stuff. So those types of things I'm not proud of, but it's part of my history, and it's the only way that I knew how to cope with all the feelings, the intense feelings and the pain and just everything as a kid. It is what it is. And until I got older, until I was able to learn healthier coping skills, I didn't know any different. Nobody taught me how to cope with my feelings. Nobody did. You didn't talk about that. And in fact, if you did talk about your feelings, you were shut up pretty quickly. At least I was in my case. Now, that may not be in your case, but I'm just telling you part of my story. So, I mean, those types of things. And then, you know, as I got older, in my 20s and that, you know, I was pretty damn full of anger. And it wasn't just anger, it was rage. And my way of expressing anger and rage was pretty much road rage. I know a lot of people see my personality that I have now. This is after years and years of healing. And they can't imagine some of the things that I did when I was younger. Those were all unhealthy coping skills. And until I learned how to deal with my feelings, excuse me, and how to deal with the emotions and learning to process it and to be okay and feel the feelings instead of trying to stuff them out, numb them, or block them completely. You know, those things, all that did is stuff all that garbage internally into here. It didn't release it, it didn't heal it, it didn't do any of those things. All it did is hurt me. It didn't hurt anybody else, unless of course I impacted them from my road rage or my, you know, my drug stuff or the things that I said to them or did or whatever. You know. So until I learned healthier coping skills, it wasn't always good for me. So learning healthier coping skills has been a blessing to me. Learning to deal with feelings was one of the hardest damn things that I've ever done. You know, because I spent years, I'm talking years, trying to block feelings and emotions out. It was never safe for me. It was damn scary to feel any type of emotion, because first of all, anytime anybody else expressed emotion, especially anger or something like that, I knew that somebody was going to get hurt. And guess what? It was usually me. So anger scared me. We're talking about feelings and stuff like that. So I wanted to suppress that pretty much at all cost. And then when it did come up, it was because there was so much anger inside, it had nowhere else to go. So guess what? It came blowing out. It blew out like an explosion. You know, you talk about anger and stuff like that and some intense feelings, and you talk about a pot boiling. Imagine a big kettle of water with the fire turned up just as high as it can be. And that water starts bubbling and it starts going and to a rolling boil. And you know what? It's like a pressure cooker. It builds up enough pressure and it's going to have to come out. It's going to explode out. And for me, that's how my anger and rage was. So I definitely had to change my behaviors, change the way that I thought about things, in order to cope with my feelings. Those coping skills were no longer working for me, so I had a desire to change. You might not be right at that point now, because maybe it is still working for you. Maybe you want to change, maybe you don't. You have to make that decision for yourself. I can't sit here and say, you know what, you're doing this and this and this, and you really should be doing this. It's not up to me. It's up to you. It's your body, your mind, your feelings, your emotions, and you have to decide what's best for you and what's working for you and what's not working for you. And if you're not ready to change, nobody's going to make you change. For me personally, I was ready to change because those coping skills weren't working for me anymore.